It was a quiet evening in July when Marijoy and Jacqueline Chiong decided to step out for a short trip into town. They were known in their neighborhood as kind, polite, and deeply attached to their family. Their parents trusted them completely, so when they said they would return before dark, no one doubted it. As the sun began to set, the sisters were seen laughing near a busy shopping area, carrying small bags and talking cheerfully. Hours passed, and when darkness took over the city, their absence began to feel strange. Their father stayed by the window, glancing at the road every few minutes while their mother called friends one by one, asking if anyone had seen them. Each answer brought more fear. By midnight, hope turned to panic. Early the next morning, their parents visited the local police station to report them missing. Officers took the report seriously, but explained that missing person cases often resolved within a day or two. But as time dragged on, the family's anxiety deepened. Flyers with the sisters' photos were distributed across the city. Volunteers joined the search, walking through marketplaces, abandoned buildings, and nearby bus terminals. Yet every effort led to silence. A week later, a bus driver came forward saying he had seen two girls who matched their description near a desolate stretch of road. The area was surrounded by thick trees with an old bridge that locals often avoided at night. The driver said they looked worried, as if waiting for someone who never arrived. When investigators checked the site, they discovered something chilling: a broken hair clip, a torn piece of fabric, and a small purse lying in the dirt. It was clear that something terrible had happened there. The Chiong family's home became filled with reporters and curious neighbors, all asking questions no one could answer. Rumors spread quickly. Some said the girls had been taken for ransom, others whispered about revenge or a crime of passion. But none of it made sense. The sisters had no enemies, no secrets, and no reason to disappear. Every passing day deepened the mystery. The once peaceful home now echoed with sorrow, and an unshakable fear grew that the sisters would never return. The investigation had only just begun, but the darkness surrounding their disappearance was already spreading far beyond anyone's control. A week after the sisters vanished, a farmer walking along a steep ravine outside the city noticed a foul smell rising from below. When he looked down, he saw what appeared to be a body tangled among the rocks. Authorities rushed to the scene, and what they found shocked even the most experienced officers. The body was badly decomposed, barely recognizable, but a few personal belongings offered painful clues: a necklace, a shoe, and a small bracelet that Marijoy always wore. The discovery confirmed everyone's worst fears. News spread quickly, and the Chiong family's grief turned into heartbreak. Jacqueline, the younger sister, was still missing, and hope of finding her alive began to fade. The investigation intensified. Police closed off the area, searching for any sign of how the body had gotten there. Tire marks were visible near the edge of the road above the ravine, suggesting that a vehicle had stopped there. Some footprints were also found, but the rain had washed most of them away. The investigators believed that the sisters had been taken by force, assaulted, and thrown into the ravine to hide the crime. It was a theory that horrified the entire community. Witnesses began to come forward. One vendor said she saw two young women arguing with several men near a bus stop that same night. Another claimed she heard screams near the old bridge around midnight. But none of the testimonies matched perfectly, and confusion surrounded every lead. Police tried to piece together the timeline, but gaps kept appearing, making it impossible to know exactly what had happened after the girls left the city. As the investigation dragged on, whispers of corruption and mishandled evidence began to circulate. Some people believed the police were under pressure to solve the case quickly, even if it meant making mistakes. Others thought powerful figures might be involved, and the truth was being covered up. Despite the growing rumors, the Chiong family continued to cooperate with investigators, clinging to the faint hope that Jacqueline might still be alive somewhere. But as days turned into weeks, that hope began to crumble. Every lead ended in dead ends, and the darkness surrounding the sisters' disappearance grew thicker. The discovery of Marijoy's body was only the beginning of a mystery that would soon spiral into one of the most controversial cases the country had ever seen. After weeks of confusion and unanswered questions, the investigation finally took a new turn. The police began to focus on a group of young men who were often seen around the area where the sisters had last been spotted. They were known for reckless behavior, driving late at night and getting into trouble. One of them owned a car that witnesses claimed looked similar to the one parked near the bridge on the night of the disappearance. The police brought them in for questioning, hoping to find a breakthrough. At first, the suspects denied everything. They claimed they didn't even know the Chiong sisters and had nothing to do with their disappearance. But as interrogations grew more intense, cracks began to show. One suspect started to contradict himself, and another became visibly nervous whenever the crime scene was mentioned. Investigators noticed that the description of events kept changing, suggesting that someone was hiding something. Late one night, one of the men suddenly confessed, claiming that he and his friends had taken the sisters against their will and that things had gone too far. He described the events in disturbing detail, explaining how they ended up near the ravine. The confession shocked the entire city. Newspapers published the story the next morning, calling it a breakthrough in the case. But even as people demanded justice, some felt uneasy. Parts of the confession didn't align with the evidence found at the scene. The timeline was unclear and several key details seemed inconsistent. Some investigators believed that the confession might have been forced, while others thought it was genuine but incomplete. Still, the police used the confession to build their case. They collected what little evidence they had, car fibers, a shoe print, and a few eyewitness statements, to strengthen their claims. The suspects were charged with kidnapping, murder, and other serious crimes. The Chiong family felt a mix of relief and sorrow. Finally, there was some movement in the case, but the truth still felt uncertain. As the suspects were taken to court, questions lingered. Why did only one body appear if both sisters were said to have been killed? What had truly happened to Jacqueline? Behind the public headlines and the police reports, the story seemed far from complete. Something still didn't add up, and the real truth was buried deeper than anyone realized. When the trial began, it quickly became one of the most talked-about cases in the country. Crowds gathered outside the courthouse every morning, some demanding justice for the Chiong family, others questioning whether the right people were on trial. Inside, the atmosphere was tense and emotional. The suspects sat quietly, surrounded by police, while the family of the sisters watched every moment with tearful eyes. Reporters filled the room, ready to capture each detail for the evening news. The prosecution presented its case with confidence, describing a story of violence, cruelty, and deliberate murder. They pointed to the confession, the car fibers, and the eyewitness accounts as proof that the men before the court were responsible for the sisters' disappearance. But as the days passed, the defense began to reveal cracks in the case. They argued that the confession had been made under pressure, that the evidence was circumstantial, and that the police had ignored important details that didn't fit their theory. Several witnesses changed parts of their statements, and some even admitted that they had been afraid to speak up earlier. The defense claimed that there were other possible suspects who had never been investigated. Still, the public had already made up its mind, and most people believed the men were guilty. Each day brought new headlines and debates on radio shows and television. People took sides, arguing about who was telling the truth. For the Chiong family, the trial was torture. They wanted answers, but the constant uncertainty tore them apart. As closing arguments were made, the prosecution reminded the court of the sisters' innocence, painting a picture of two young lives destroyed by cruelty. The defense, however, warned that convicting the wrong people would only add to the tragedy. When the verdict was finally read, the room fell silent. The judge declared the accused guilty on all major charges. Some people cheered, believing justice had been served, while others sat in shock. The suspects were led away in handcuffs, their faces pale and empty. Yet even as the sentence was announced, unease hung in the air. Too many questions were left unanswered, and one mystery remained unsolved: the whereabouts of Jacqueline. The case was officially closed, but the truth still felt painfully out of reach. Years passed after the verdict, but the Chiong sisters' case refused to fade from public memory. The story continued to stir debates, dividing communities and leaving people uncertain about what to believe. For many, justice had been served when the suspects were convicted, but for others, the case felt incomplete and unsettling. Questions that had been buried during the trial began to resurface as journalists, investigators, and even ordinary citizens started to look deeper into the evidence. New reports suggested that some testimonies had been inconsistent, and certain pieces of evidence had gone missing during the investigation. The idea that the real truth had never been revealed began to gain strength. Then rumors began to circulate about new witnesses. Some claimed they had seen the sisters alive after the date of the alleged murder. Others said they overheard conversations suggesting that one of the sisters might have been taken far away, rather than killed. Though none of these claims could be verified, they fueled growing suspicion that something had gone terribly wrong in the original investigation. Families of the convicted men continued to fight for their innocence, presenting new information that questioned the validity of the confession used in court. The media picked up the story once again, and the Chiong case returned to national attention. For the Chiong family, the renewed publicity was a painful reminder of everything they had lost. They had endured years of mourning, believing their daughters were gone forever. Yet the idea that one of them, Jacqueline, could still be alive stirred emotions they didn't know how to handle, a fragile mixture of hope and fear. Police officials refused to reopen the case, insisting the matter had been settled, but doubts continued to spread among the public. Eventually, the story became more than a case of crime and punishment. It became a mystery about truth itself. People began to question the system, the investigation, and even the meaning of justice. The more they searched for answers, the more contradictions appeared. No one could say with certainty what had truly happened that night. The case of the Chiong sisters remains one of the most haunting mysteries in the country's history. A story where justice was declared yet closure never came, and the truth continues to hide in the shadows of doubt.